Um, we're going to talk about succeeding or not succeeding in Central Europe, but probably that just means succeeding in general. But we'll see. I guess we shall begin by introducing ourselves and also describing our companies a bit. I think will be good. So I will start. I'm Brandon Sheffield. My company is Necrosoft Games. We have really only released one thing, which is a game called Gunhouse, which we put out on PlayStation Mobile and then Windows Phone, because Sony paid us and then Microsoft paid us, and then eventually we'll release it on real things that people own, hopefully. But we are based all over the world. Everybody just lives wherever they live, and there are 4 core people with plus several contractors who we try to reuse. So we're like 8-ish people. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Johanna. I'm COO of Sproing, which is a Viennese studio. We are actually very seasoned meanwhile. We have been founded in 2001 and meanwhile run a team of around about 85 people. So we started off with essentially work for hire for multiple console platforms of the olden days back then, and then changed during like 2010, 2011 to free-to-play games on first browser and meanwhile mainly mobile platforms. And yeah, since last year we can also call ourselves publishers because we took over a game that we produced ourselves, which is Asterix and Friends. We actually produced it together with Social Spiels, which is probably a known name to some of the guys here. And we took it over and meanwhile publish it ourselves instead of working with a publisher on that. So that's very exciting for us.
Hello, my name is Jakub Dvorsky. I'm founder of Amanita Design. We are responsible for games like Samorost, Machinery, or Botanicula. We are based in Prague, Czech Republic, but some of our regular collaborators are living elsewhere, like in Bratislava and Berlin, so we are kind of international company. And yeah, that's it.
Hi, I'm Denis, and I'm one half of Kunabi brother based here in Vienna. The other half is my brother, so we are just 2 people. And our company is now 1.5 year old, and we released one game, a mobile game. It's called Black, and yeah.
So the first thing I want to talk about is something that has been coming up, at least in my conversations, a lot during this conference, which is how do we succeed now? As the landscape has changed, the middle-sized developers are mostly gone or going away. So you've got really small teams like ours, or you have some larger teams like yours, and then some kind of verging on middle size like you have. So what avenues are available to us right now for success? Some that I can think of are like console owners are still paying for content, and some publishers are, but it's really difficult to work with them. And I think once people have become more independent, it doesn't feel right to work with those people because they always want something that you don't want to give them. So aside from, like, for me, scaling really small and getting small amounts of publishing money in exchange for just timed exclusivity, that's what we do. But what do you all think are the current ways to succeed right now? And also, do you believe that you can actually sell games and make money from that? Because I don't understand that model at all.
Okay, I'll try. um, I don't have any great advices how to succeed immediately, but um, our way was to make what we love in the first place, and then the success came to us. And I think it should work even nowadays. I hope so. So I would split it to this question to two topics: how to succeed financially and how to succeed artistically. And I think it's a good idea if you like making games and if you really love games, you should focus on the game itself. And maybe if you are a beginner and want to make games, maybe you should start just for free, for fun. Don't expect nothing because it's really hard nowadays to make money and make living out of making games independently. But I believe that if you have a talent and you have a passion for your work, you will stay alive just from making games. But don't expect much, at least for the first few years, the first few games. I'm making games myself 20 years, and I started earning money after first 10 years. So I'm half of my game development time was just for free. I really loved making games, so I made them. Obviously, I was young and I needed just very little, and my parents supported me for the first few years at least, so it was easier. Now, when I have a family, I need to bring some money. So that's a different question, but where I started. Somebody wants to continue?
Closer. So I think what we see right now in the industry, and that makes it so incredibly hard to make a living out of it, is that the distribution has again become the biggest problem. That it used to be like that in the past, when it was still a battle about shelf spaces and about release slots with the publisher. Like if all the publishers had their annual planning and their releases in every quarter, and you had to be right for that release and on time with your production, so that you had a chance for distribution. Otherwise, things became really messy. And then there was some golden time in between. I think I would call it a market irregularity probably, where mobile was still fresh, or before that browser games were still fresh, and where there was such a surge and such a new interest from consumer side that it was easy to just start off with very little funding and with just a lot of passion and probably some self-exploitation, and you could just enter into those spots and kind of get some turf. And some companies really became big on that kind of strategy, like very few of them, but probably Rovio was a case like that were just very small for a very long time, then had the right game at the right time and just grasped this enormous installed base meanwhile. And now that the market is pretty saturated again, and from my feeling, there is very few people who would now stand up and say, hey, I know where it is going, kind of what this next big thing is going to be. I think right now we are in a situation where the market is saturated again, and where again there is gatekeepers that are very powerful in the market and that make access very, very hard. So even when right now it's a brilliant time to develop games, it probably has never been easier to make a game. We have all those great tools around that you can just pick up and start, and we have all those app stores where you can just push them out and see who likes them. But in a way, this is an illusion. The market access is very hard because there is this huge distribution problem, and I think what at least our take on that is, as a company, is that still you need to work with distribution partners. We at least need to do that because we don't have this enormous installed base to just market into or so. And for us, it's still kind of the biggest challenge is still managing our risks, trying to have several things to work on. That's not anything that is particularly Central European. I mean, I take that even you have a portfolio strategy in a way. You don't put all the eggs in one basket. You try to spread your risk. You try to work for different things, right? And that way you muddle through and see if that next big thing jumps out, and then jump on it and see if you can make it that way.
So yeah, this is maybe, I don't know what other questions Brandon pull out his head, but this is maybe the question I can talk about it a lot. And that being said, I just want to say that I will have a talk about that in Subotron on 19 February here in Vienna. So if you want to come. Yeah, so now I can talk from our perspective. We are we are new to the scene, to everything. We never made any games. We were both developers, but coming also from arts. My brother is a musician and I'm a writer. And so those things, those guys are talking about, like he's working 20 years in the industry, and they are talking about changes, and they have to find new ways to adapt and everything. We didn't have to do that. It's only like already history for us, so we don't see those changes like like problems. We just approached it like a new and curious way, and we just try to find a way for ourselves. And maybe the first advice would be how we made it is to be flexible, and that's also on the side of defining success on the first side. So you don't have to define or you can define success from the beginning, like, okay, if I want to be successful, I want to be there. Yes, maybe you can do that, but you'll have to adapt. You have to change those definitions, and maybe to set it higher or lower or change, however. But to be flexible on that also. So we are maybe not the best example because that's the truth. It's hard to succeed and everything, and we are only two of us. We made one game and it was pretty successful. It came up to the US iPhone charts and stayed there for 6 weeks. So it's not like, yes, that's how you can do it. But we also tried to be flexible on that point and to define success, and said, okay, we never said we are successful now. We reached our targets and that's it. We always try to define it new and to see what else can we do to be not even more successful, but we have the one situation now and we are defining success differently now, and we try to reach that. So that's the first advice, maybe, to be flexible. And also we tried to use that on all fields. Just be flexible on everything, changing a lot, adapting a lot, and thinking about the strategies and just changing them the very next day. And also one important thing is we try to approach, because it's a huge industry, is got a great history and everything, and a lot of things are happening right now, and that's why we brought our knowledge from other fields maybe. But one thing was most important to me. We tried to approach it with common sense, actually. Just use everything and think about it, and just go after anything.
So I feel like I'm kind of going to know the answer to this question already, but it may be an interesting discussion. Given that it is, well, it's always difficult to know when you're in a creative industry what people are going to want and what they're going to buy and what the future will hold. But to what extent do you feel like uniqueness and making games for a niche or for yourself is a viable way forward? Because I have definitely seen that in times like these, there are companies that will try to play it safe, and I feel like those companies are the ones that are the first to go, because if you try to make something for everyone or make something more generic or just do a sequel, then it's almost a bigger risk than trying something new. I mean, like Amanita Design is always doing something visually weird and stuff to kind of stand out, because in a way it's safer to be different and strange than to be the same as others. But then you look at like the charts and you see clones, clones, clones all in a row, or as we call like +1 innovation, like dominating the charts. So how do you feel about this in the current climate?
Well, it's probably a bit hard to not become cynical about that issue, right? I think what I like to think is what makes good games is the speed of iteration and the speed on, or the pace in which new information gets into the game during development and probably even after. And I think for that you first need to have the environment to get this iteration speed going. So any very bureaucratic system or anything that is very, stale and inert and complicated will destroy this spark of creativity and this quick learning from your own mistakes or from your own, from the information that just evolves in the development process. And also, if you're not doing it with the right passion, you will fail even in making a clone. I would suggest, right? I think even if you make a ripoff of an existing game, you will only have success with that if you add this +1 innovation, and you can only find this +1 innovation that is not the -1 innovation if you have a certain passion for your work. But then kind of when I think about your question in terms of target markets and target audiences, I think what you see in the App Store is that obviously the ones that are making the most money is the ones with a broad appeal. That's just a fact, and it's nearly a redundant information, I would say. Mass market makes more money than niche, but that doesn't mean that that you aren't well off with a niche product if you do it right and if you can cater to that niche. And then I think it's a question of your company setup. I think it also doesn't make sense to cater to a niche that you don't understand or can't relate to just because it's a niche. You have to do it with a certain passion and understanding for the audience that you cater to. Ultimately, it's a cultural product that we are creating, and it only gives any value to the one who's supposed to spend money for it if it speaks to their hearts and minds, right? So I think there is nothing wrong with mass market audiences. It's nothing wrong with creating something that your mom would play as well or so. But in any way, you need to spend your brain and pour your passion into the production. Otherwise, you will fail anyway.
I think there's very many strategies how to approach the game design and everything. But so I understand only one of them, which is the way we go, and it's the honest approach to make the game the best we can. So we like it. So we are just simply making the best game for us, which we want to play. And honestly, even though we have a lot of feedback from players, we don't listen to it at all. We just listen to it only to a certain extent, that if some puzzle, for example, doesn't work properly, then we need to fix it. But if players want, let's say, Machinarium 2 or more robots or more that or that, we don't really care about these advices at all, and go our own way, which we believe is the only way, only proper and honest way. And I already talked about it at the first question that I believe in artistic success and financial success. And for us, the artistic success is much more important. And I believe if some game is really great and people like it, then they will obviously pay for it, and then you will be also financially successful. And it worked for us as well, at least. So that's the only way I can recommend. I don't really understand how someone can predict the market and try to target certain bunch of players and make something for them if he doesn't feel the game as the best game for himself. So my advice is to be honest with yourself and do it just for the passion itself that you want to play this game.
Yeah, I'm on your side there, and also on Johanna's, because I believe that your game doesn't necessarily need to be like unique, like 100% or anything, but the developer has to know what he is doing. That's the most important thing, and who is he targeting, and also on both sides, artistically and on the financial side, and he has to know that, he has to do it the best he can, obviously, and because if he doesn't believe in it, if he doesn't know what he's doing, then we are not talking about success. And after he has done it, hopefully successfully, artistically, and he wants to be financially successful, then he has to try and to communicate that knowledge he has about it, that idea, to communicate it clearly to the target audience. Even if it's a mass audience, it's a niche audience, doesn't matter, but he knows what he wants to do and where he wants to go, and that's the way to what's the best way to present the idea and the game, and then he'll maybe succeed.
May I add something? Obviously, there's so many games nowadays. It's really difficult to stand out, and to stand out, you need that uniqueness and originality to show something which is completely, or at least in some way, new. And for this, you really need to have someone at a team who has a strong vision for the game. Maybe you are a great game designer and your game is really clever and maybe even unique, but it's not. You won't see it at the first sight. At least not from the screenshots on App Store. And I think that's a problem when you want to succeed financially and grab the attention of press and players. Then I guess, and I believe you need someone who will help you to make the game stand out, at least visually, which is a very important part. So if you have a team and you have a great idea for a game and you can make it technically splendid and everything, but your graphic artist is just average or doesn't produce anything unique, then I think you should find somebody more interesting to stand out and to show the world that your games is unique, not only visually but also inside. But the first sight is very important, unfortunately, I must say.
Yeah, I see a lot of. I don't really understand who these games are supposed to appeal to visually. A lot of games that I see, and I think actually it's not that they're supposed to appeal to anyone. They're just supposed to not offend anybody. So like Farmville 2, it has a style sort of, but that style is just nobody will hate it completely. It's not you're not gonna look at that screenshot and be like, awesome, that looks so cool. I want to move that pig over there. Like it's not gonna really make you excited. It's just gonna make you feel like I don't hate that. So, do you want to say something about that?
I think Farmville 2 is also targeted to a casual audience. And for those of you who listen to the game developers rant in the morning, we have this phenomenon in the mainly in the mobile market, but also probably in the browser games market and Facebook games market and so on, that especially for that target group, you actually have to essentially pay people for playing your game. And I think this is something that in this brief period of time where that type of game or that distribution channel was still new, just worked brilliantly, because suddenly many people played that didn't play games before, but it just remains that those people wouldn't define themselves as gamers. They probably happen to spend money on a game every once in a while, but essentially you have to convince them with very expensive marketing to do so. And I think this is just tricky. I think it's a market that is becoming unviable for most people that can develop games, and is only viable for a few multis who really pay like 10 euros in cost of acquisition for one user that then probably pays for their games. I think it's also a very skewed mechanic, because companies that actually put down those advertising money, they are usually investor financed, and they are more land grabbing market share than trying to make a sustainable business out of their companies.
Yeah, like the thing about mass market giving the most money and the most profit is true, but smaller companies have basically no chance of even achieving that, because in order to get to that kind of generic, inoffensive thing, you have to do market research and figure out with metrics what people don't hate, and yeah, the things that people hate the least, and that is not really accessible for companies of my size. So at that rate, it's not easier, it's a less of a risk to take a visual risk or a mechanics risk, because the only thing we have is to do something different. Because if we try to do the same things, the big guys are just going to crush us all. We have no chance there. So here's a question that's a little more related to the region, which is, so a lot of the target audience and a lot of the funding and the publishers and everything are in the US or Asia, or basically outside of Central Europe. So coming from here, how do you maintain those contacts? For us, it's easy because I'm based in the US, and everybody else doesn't have to worry about it because I can just do it myself. What do you do, or do you even care about it?
Well, Amanita is self-funded, and we never had any external financing, so I don't really know how to get funding. But again, I would suggest just don't care about it. Really, it's very difficult probably, and you can't rely on it at all. You're lucky if you make it somehow, then great, definitely try it. But I would still recommend to count on zero budget, which is the best way to make game, because you are free, you are not responsible to anyone, and of course, if you need to pay a rent and anything, you can still have second job. It is. I know many people. Not for a company, but for a bunch of people who have a studio together. It's definitely. I did it for 10 years, and it worked. I'm still here living. And yeah.
Yeah, same here. We self-funded our project, and I don't know. like you said, I mean, even if you are starting a company, you will have some ideas. You don't have to obviously to have a business plan written down on 50 pages, but you'll have some business plan in your head, hopefully. So you will know where you want to go and how you would like to approach this, and how much money do you have, and if you are going after investors or funding or anything, and you know there's not much here in Vienna, then you'll know where they are. You'll start talking to them, I guess, and be ready and have that money to go over and to visit, to go to the conferences, to talk to them. I mean, it's, if you're interested in that kind of like business model, like funding, you just have to go after it. If you have enough money to do that, obviously you have to have money also to do that. You cannot do it like from your home. So yeah, and if you have that money, then maybe you can invest it in your game and fund it yourself. So it's on, or we all have to decide it, those opportunities. And like you said, it's true. There's like I think it was a Mike Rose's talk here in Vienna where he presented a map of the world, and he said he showed like arrows, and the things are happening here, like in US and Great Britain maybe, and it was like a zoom out then, and you are here. So yeah, that's true. And there are still some fundings here also in Vienna, in Austria, like state fundings, and you can also try to approach them. But yeah, that's kind of also like a kind of a business model already. If you're from beginning, you're thinking about how you're gonna found your project.
I think you should make for free at least the demo, which is something you can show off. You can submit it to contests and festivals and stuff, and make it available for free on the web. And this is something you can work with, and some opportunities might come to you. I still believe that at least the demo or something is great to make on your own, because start with looking for money, it's, at least for me, incredibly difficult. I wouldn't go this way.
Well, I think a demo is a good idea anyway to solidify your own ideas, and then it also helps convincing people to spend money on that idea, right? It's just easier to know what you're talking about for both yourself and your probably business partner in the future, your publishing partner or whatever. But I think what we have here in Europe is, I think, a very, very, at least in Central Europe, is a badly developed investor landscape. There is lots of money, but it's not necessarily going into the kind of young and risky endeavors. So what we have is high taxes. So I agree. I think it's always a good thing to try to tap public subsidy programs. I think we have very, very decent infrastructure, at least here in Austria. It's what I can talk about. And then I think it's all about reaching out. It's for us, our company only works because 2 of our people are virtually living in planes and hotel rooms, maintaining all the contacts and trying to get the word out that there is actually a capable team here. And this just requires probably more energy from us than if we would live in Silicon Valley and just meet guys over lunch or something like that. But I think also from my experience, it just has a different effect on people if we say, hey, this deal is so important for us that we hop on the plane next week and fly all the way over to whatever, Los Angeles or San Francisco to meet you. This is also kind of a symbolic act that you can have and set that you probably can't do it that way. It's probably not that amazing. And I think this is also something that you can cultivate and just make use of. It's actually sometimes more helpful to have those individual meetings than meet at GTC or something like that.
So we were talking like a couple days ago with guys from Cliffhanger and also other people. Like it's for companies that do need injections of funding somehow or other. Like even mine at this small level needs. We need to have people fund our projects so that we can continue to live while we make it. And it's not like we're work for hire or anything. We just get people to pay for our own stuff, for platform exclusivity or whatever, for a brief window. But you need to, in order to talk to these people, you need to maintain the relationship with them, which is really hard over email and things. And as we were discussing then, like it's hard to, if you only see these people when you can afford to fly out there or at trade shows or anything, it's hard to maintain them as friendly social contacts as well as business stuff. So you wind up having to try to integrate both of those in the same meeting. Like you're like, hey, how are the kids? And also I have this game that maybe you should give me a lot of money for. It strikes me as a challenge, but I don't know if, I guess if you're self-funded completely, it doesn't matter at all. But you are not completely self-funded, I guess. So what do you think about that?
We also don't have an investor on board or anything like that. So we finance our games, or the vast majority of the money that's coming in is essentially work for hire jobs. So publishers would come to us with a concept, or we would probably come to them with a concept or a first playable prototype or something like that, and we would sell that. Yeah, I mean, probably repeat myself here. I think it's all about maintaining networks. Also, sometimes for the sake of maintaining networks, we don't only go after, trade shows or conferences if we have something to sell there or to pitch there, but sometimes we just go for maintaining contacts, for checking in on the social level, for seeing people that we have worked with in the past and don't work with currently or something like that, and feel the pulse. And I have to add, recently, since a year now or so, we also use the help of an agency of DDM to just be out there and find opportunities for us. So this is also something I think that has its benefits and its downsides, obviously, but we have been very happy with them, and I think it's also a good way, kind of working with an agency, to just get more buzz, more industry buzz, which is probably also a little bit of a downside of our splendid isolation here, that we are probably more cut off than other studios from, just a lively scene around us, and developers chatting over beers every night, and spreading the latest rumors out of the big fish, out of the Apples and the Googles or so. What you guys think about that?
I think it's definitely a disadvantage to be kind of from these big publishers and platform holders. But on the other hand, it's still possible to maintain the relationships with contacts over there, just over emails. It's not very personal, but it has also its advantages. For example, I learned how to behave like a proper business guy, a really tough one, and stuff on emails, which I can't do and never will in person, definitely, because I'm not that guy. But it's easy if it's email with 2 sentences or 3, and you can be really strict and like different than you are in normal life. So yeah, it's possible, and it's even possible to maintain some friendly relationship with some people at Apple and Google, even though it's not that great, but it's still possible.
Yeah, I don't know, but the thing I know is it's crazy situation if you are starting. If you also, I guess, if you worked on different projects and games, and now you're ready for your game, and you cannot self-fund it, and you need somebody, or just if you need contacts from Google or Apple, I don't know, anything, then also those things like networking can be important. I remember now one conversation at the JDC, because if you cannot do it yourself, maybe it would be like a good idea to have somebody, the other guy who's successful and who will just tell the other one, this is great stuff. You can have a look at it, and he trusts him or her, and that's maybe a way to go. Also, I had those situations also because if you're like here in Vienna and you just made your first iOS game, how you're gonna go to Apple? I mean, it's like crazy. But for instance, there was this famous developer, and I asked him, "What do you think about the game?" He said, "Yes, it's great." And do you know somebody from Apple? And then he wrote an email and said, "Have a look at this. This is great." And obviously, that means something. So that's also very, very important. It's not maybe you just don't have to go directly and find somebody funding or business contacts. You can do it, maybe somebody from your friends or contacts or other developers can do it for you.
Yeah, actually, that's true. I find that I get at least 2 emails a week from people saying, "Hey, do you know someone at somewhere so that I can talk to them about something?" And I do it so much that I feel like, wow, this should be my job or something. Because I'm always just referring. I'm writing these personal recommendations all the time. But I'll only do it, of course, if I actually like the thing. Otherwise, I just forward them. I don't write anything. I'm just like, here's a person. Bye. I shouldn't say that out loud in case that ever happens to anyone here. But yeah, it's maintaining the relationships are like that's important with the publishers, but also kind of on the marketing and buzz side, like you were talking about, it can be difficult if your target audience is the United States, because there is such a big market there. It strikes me as being relatively tough to reach that through traditional channels like press, and also like social media. It's like time zone wise, you're in the wrong area, and I don't know. It seems really tough. Like when I was a journalist for Game Developer Magazine, and I would get an email from someone, and it looked kind of generic, and the English was a little weird, then I would be like, I don't know about this, and I would just kind of skip it. And because it's just easier to ignore if it's not like perfect and grabbing me right away, and I'm like, oh, this is probably going to be a social game or something, and I don't want to read about that, because journalists never want to read about social games, because like they don't get paid any money, so they just want to look at games that they want to look at, which is a big problem in the press. But anyway, so marketing stuff, how do you do it? I know that I feel like for you just have your art, and then people are like, I like that, and it just does the work by itself. But maybe that's not exactly what happens. That's the way it feels to me. It's not? Okay, so what do you do?
I don't have any good recipes for making marketing, but it's definitely a lot of work. It is even if you have a lovely screenshot and nice trailer, then still plenty of work you need to do. So now marketing, right? Okay. So broad topic, but definitely
more specifically, from here to the outside, like which narrows down the topic a bit. Like if your target audience were the Czech Republic, it would be a little easier. But if your target audience is everywhere outside of there, most of which is thousands of miles away, how do you go about that?
I think we do it the same way how everyone else in the world, but it's definitely the harder part for us because our English is terrible. For example, in our company, I am maybe the best English speaker, so you have a image how we can speak English or we can't in our company, and obviously we need to talk to people. We have Facebook and Twitter and stuff like this. Of course, when we post something on Facebook, we check the time if it's already a good time for United States. But also Russia is a very important market for us. So there's a different time zone. So sometimes we post something twice a day just for these two different markets. And then, yeah, that's definitely harder. But maybe it's also an advantage that we are here because we are standing in the middle of the whole world, as you know, because that's Central Europe, and we can. For example, I am sure that for American developers, there's maybe a little bit Europe, there's maybe a little bit Japan, but I'm sure American developers don't even know about Russia, that it's a country where people have computers and mobile phones, and I don't know what Americans know about Russia, but it's pretty huge market actually. For us, it's the second biggest market after United States, and the gap is quite close. It's almost a draw actually. So it's not negligible, and we can focus on them perhaps more easily than Americans. So I would recommend to Central Europeans to focus also on other markets than to the West.
I think what you're picking up upon here is the question that we had before a little bit with who do you cater to and how well do you understand those people, and I think what you said is very right. I think if you don't if you have a hard time speaking to Americans, then probably you should just not do that and just see who else is there who likes your games and who can actually cater to, right? I think not every game developer in the world is only hunting the American users. I think what we have seen in the last couple of years probably is that many of the Asian companies also reach out specifically to European studios in order to have them make European titles because they see that they don't have much market share here and actually want to get that expertise for exactly marketing to European users. And I mean, getting back to your question, probably, I think I can't contribute too much to the marketing questions themselves because this is really what usually our publishers are doing. But for us, it has always been a game design and game creation challenge to make our games appealing for US clients as well, or for US consumers as well, essentially. And in the end, I think you have a certain cultural background, even if you're a very multicultural studio like we are. We have like 13 nations or so in our studio, but still we are a European studio, and I think it's very hard to emulate being a US studio. And I think you can try to do that, and you can do your best, but in the end, you probably just shouldn't specialize in things that American people can do better. I would, it would probably be bad choice for us to do a hunting game or something like that that we really don't have much connection with.
Yeah, I just want to say the best point today, I think, is that we are in the middle of the world. I really do feel like that the Vienna is actually in the middle of the whole world, and if you have like that feeling in the background, then you don't have a problem. And Brandon, we do have good beer here, so yeah. So actually, yes. If you're talking to the press or anybody, like you said, and if you know like your English is bad, it doesn't mean you have a problem. I mean, you just have to judge it, to know what you are talking about, and then you find somebody who will proofread your emails or anything important communication. So even if I knew about that, I was not like, oh, my English is like perfect, I will like impress the guys from the New York Times right now. But in important conversation, I just found somebody from Belgrade who would proofread all my emails, and it wouldn't cost much because it was like in Belgrade, and I know a lot of guys there. So that's also a way. I mean, it costs less, and it's easy to do. So you just have to know what you are doing. So and the next thing is I didn't have that feeling that it's hard to approach those guys in US and in UK maybe. Maybe because of the proofing, I don't know. Maybe they've done a good job, but actually they were the first. They replied and answered. They wrote about our game, and only after that I used that to approach the in the German-speaking area here and then they would react. So that's I didn't have that feeling. So yeah. You just have to have that feeling that you are in the middle of the world, and then it will work.
Yeah, I want the ability to be able to react to whatever market I might have, because I don't know. It could be that one of my games will just sell 1 million units in Hungary for some reason. I don't know. It's possible that for some reason it really resonates with people there. So like the fact that your games do really well in Russia is like once you see that, you have to be able to respond and kind of fill the needs of those people as well. Like suddenly you have a market that you kind of need to cater to. Do you feel that way about Russia, for example?
No, as I said, we are just making the games we want to make. But yeah, marketing wise, yes. We have but we don't do really much in that way. We have a few really hardcore fans over there, and we maintain communication with them, and we are sending them presents and stuff. So they like us, and they do really a lot of work for us, and they do it their own way, which people somehow recognize that they are not any marketing guys. They are real gamers, and they really love our stuff. So they trust them, and it's kind of general recommendation to maintain your fan community, which might be small, maybe few people or few maybe tens of people, but they do a lot for you, and they do it for free, which is great, and they are trustworthy. So definitely care about them and be their friends, because it also helps. And they are usually very nice people, so it's pleasant anyway.
Probably what we discover here as well a little bit, and I can certainly respond to that, is that marketing games today is really a little bit of a surprise cake in a way. It's, I think, very hard to predict. And it certainly was for us. I think the little real marketing experience that we have inside of our company is referring to our game Asterix. And when we took it over from the publisher, from Deutsche Telekom, that originally financed it and worked with us in the beginning, we we had a Facebook version out, but we didn't really believe that this was really taking off. And we started experimenting a little bit with Facebook marketing and spent small amounts of money into Facebook advertising, and just A/B tested a couple of the artwork images that we used, and suddenly we recognized that we have an amazing success with that actually really works out well. And I think marketing, no matter where you're based, is probably a lot based on trial and error, and just being out there, trying things, figuring out what works and what doesn't, and then pursue the stuff that works. I think it's just like the good old vacuum cleaner salesman 100 years ago or so, that have to ring on a lot of doors in order to find the ones where people are actually buying. And I think this is how marketing works from my perspective so far. I hope that next year I will find it more predictable, but so far I don't.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember and think about is that marketing isn't just like you send out a press release, and if it doesn't go well, you're like, oh, well, that's the end of marketing. Sorry. Like you have to keep trying and keep doing it, and it's really hard to remember that or even want to do it when you're an independent game developer. You just want to make your stupid video game. But recently, after like listening to some talks about independent marketing and things like that, I realized that whereas I used to think about marketing your game as a necessary thing that you have to do after you make it or while you're making it, I realized that it has to kind of be part of making the game in a way, because the way that you should do it well now is, it's I made this cool animation, now I'm gonna make a GIF of it and I'm gonna put it on my Tumblr and it's gonna get shared around a lot. Maybe it won't, but maybe it will. And just a music clip next to some static piece of art, or like a diorama kind of thing that's going on. Like you can just the pieces of, when you get excited about something that you made in your game, it is quite likely that someone else will be excited about that, and that can be part of, especially as an independent developer, part of what you're doing. It makes people more, they feel your excitement. If you try to tell them you should be excited about this, they're gonna shrug probably. But if you show them why you're excited about it, they will. It's got a higher chance of hitting with them. But I'm curious, how do you, once you find these fans, how do you kind of cultivate them? For example, this one guy sent me an email and he's like, hey, if you ever need any QA for any of your games, let me know, because I played your game Gunhouse a bit and I really liked it. I said, okay, send me an email. And he sent me an email, and this game, it's broken down into days, and getting to day 10, we estimated, took about 8 hours. And this guy, he emailed me, he's like, yeah, so I'm on day 65 right now, and I'm like, you played this game, it's just like it's a puzzle tower defense game. It's nice, but like he played it for days, like real days, to get there. And it's like, this guy is insane. I have to use him somehow for something. Like he loves it so much. I have to use this enthusiasm. I have no idea what to do with that. So when you find that like you've got some fans, especially if they're like in a different country or something, and they could generate some buzz in a more local, better way, what do you do?
As I said, be his friend, and I don't know, send him a T-shirt with the logo. He will love it. Really, it's that easy. Or meet him and buy him a beer, and next time, I don't know, he will. For example, we have a few people on our forum, which I never go to that forum because there are so many questions, and I just don't have time for that. But luckily, we have a few people who are taking care about the forum, and we gave them those administratory permissions. And anytime I'm somewhere where one of these people is based, for example in San Francisco, I meet them and I buy them dinner, for example, and they are so glad that we can meet, and it's so pleasant experience because they have a lot of feedback for us, and we can share with them some news which are still unavailable officially, so they have a feeling of having some bonus special stuff or at least information, and it's kind of symbiosis which is great for both sides because they are enjoying it. It's their hobby usually, so make it more pleasant for them, make it even better. And when I want to add to this topic one other thing. It's good to be, like you said, it's good to be creative and original even while doing marketing. And great inspiration, at least for me, is from current contemporary art situation, where people are not watching and consuming the art product, the end product, I mean, but they are buying the whole story. The artist, his personality is very important in nowadays contemporary art, definitely, and the whole story, how the thing or the art was created and why, and some obstacles, and I think it works very well with games as well, especially with indie games, which are somehow interesting. The whole story, the development team, and you can be very creative. You can surprise people, and you can. The first thing you should have on mind to surprise not only broad gamers audience, but press people, because they are bored to death and they want something interesting to write about, some story. So you should have this on mind. I don't have any good examples, but I heard a talk from Jost van Dongen from Ronimo Games, a Dutch company, and he had so many great examples how to make really original marketing. I forgot it also. I can't share it with you now, but check out their website and what they do if you want some inspiration.
I think one thing that you brought up now that's really important is I think there are those champions in your fan base, right, that can really do a lot. And I think whenever you can cater to those users in a personal way, I think it's probably buying your loyalty that no money in the world can buy otherwise. But also there is usually a vocal minority inside the fan base that takes over forums and other media, and I think you're ill-advised with just taking that opinion for the real thing. I think there is usually people tend to vent and tend to only post what they dislike, and I think if you just follow those leads, you're probably tinkering on your weaknesses rather than improving on your strengths. And I think that's a dangerous road to take. I think it's always, and then we are getting back to kind of knowing your product and understanding it yourself. It's always good if you can apply some common sense to the direction that your game should take, and kind of not only listen to who screams loudest at the forum or who just posts most or something like that.
I don't know exactly how much time we have left, but I feel like I should at this point start to ask for some questions from the audience in case those exist. I have plenty more questions if there aren't, but does anyone have any burning questions right now? There is one. And while we're getting the microphone up to you, I have a very specific question, which is, you were talking about redoing a Facebook post twice, and I've been very wary of repeating communications because it feels like I'm going to be spamming everyone and they're going to hate it. Is it okay for you?
Well, we do it only now and then, only with very important posts, so not very often. And also, it's not the completely same posts twice. And again, Facebook is, I don't understand the alchemy behind it, but it's not showing every post to everybody anyway, so I think it's okay. So.
Yeah, I have a question to the Kunabi brother. Congrats to Black, awesome game. What's your feeling about the clone? It's called Like Black or something. This is actually for free, and it's even worse, I heard. Is this bothering you, or is it a compliment to you?
Yeah, thanks. Congrats. And yeah, there were like a lot of clones, many of them, and we knew it will happen after we had success. So we were like, I don't know, in our heads, ready for that situation. But we didn't just lean back. We tried to protect our game and our work. So as soon as we saw clones that used our art or design or anything or name, we just wrote emails to Google and to App Store people, and they really took those apps down. So we have like a list of, I don't know, maybe 40 or something like that, clones that are not online anymore. There are just few of them now, but those games are, yeah, they're clones, but you know, they made their own art and own descriptions and icon and everything. So that's like okay with me. I don't know. That's if everybody has to answer that question for themselves. Is it like an ethical, moral question? I don't want to bother with that. I just don't want people to, for instance, copy our icon and our name and say Black, and that's not Black. So that was a thing we tried to protect. And if you like make a ripoff and a clone, and you put your own art or add something like something new or some new levels, yeah, that's legitimate that you can do it. So we don't have really a problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
For Necrosoft games, how do you keep the vision of the game and the communication across all those time zones up to date?
Yeah, it's difficult to keep everyone focused across time zones, and especially there are a couple guys I've never met in person, and it's hard to put any kind of pressure on them when they don't even know you. They don't even really care that much. There are a couple guys who have never played the game they're working on because at present it requires a somewhat difficult setup because you've got to have 4 players and 4 wired Xbox controllers. Like right now, that's what you have to do. In the end, it'll be online and whatever. But right now, that's what you need, and so most people don't have that. So they haven't even played the game that they're working on. So it's really hard to get people motivated sometimes. And I actually had so much trouble with this, especially with artists, because artists, I don't know, they're just like, oh, there's a bird, and then they're gone. they're just gone. So getting artists to be motivated and focused on your game is I asked a lot of people, like, what can I do to try to get these people to focus. And I came up with some things. Threats don't work because they'll just go away. Money doesn't seem to be a motivating factor. That's all very confusing. But in terms of your actual question, I got sidetracked because I started thinking about artists. By the way, if you find reliable artists that always deliver for you, then you should keep them or give them to me. So maintaining the vision, usually the vision comes from me. So it winds up being my responsibility to communicate to everyone why this is cool. And I think it tends to be easiest when we have some art and when people can actually see what it looks like and where it's going. And then I try to talk to everyone on like Google Chat or whatever, and any kind of thing that just gets us in touch with each other. And recently we in the last several months got a forum where we share all the new assets, all the new things that are happening, anything that's happening with the game kind of press-wise, I will share. And so then people can see, yes, this actually is a thing. It's a real game, and it's happening, and all of us are here, and it's important. There was one guy who we actually had to communicate to him why the work that he was doing was important, because he didn't really understand why we were asking him to do the things that we asked him to do, but then we just explained it carefully, because so perhaps somewhat unusually for an indie team, we have an art production pipeline going, because since we're small and we can't afford to pay pros, we have people who have specific things that they're better at and less good at. So we have, for the backgrounds of our game Gunsport, we have a guy who first does the sketches and then of the backgrounds, and then our art director guy kind of fixes those up. Then he goes back and he does the line art, and then that like the outlines of everything. Then that is given to this other guy who is like one of the best texture and like pixel texture artists that I have seen, but he's weak in terms of perspective and anatomy and stuff because he's never studied art. He just became a pixel artist through doing it a lot, and so he's great at texture and stuff, but he's weak in those other areas. So taking it from one guy and then giving it to this guy results in an awesome product, but both of them kind of don't get to see the full picture from the beginning because they have to work on parts of it. And so that winds up, that had to be communicated to these guys because they're used to being like, oh yeah, we're just, I'm going to do this whole thing myself and it's going to get a lot of praise on like Pixiv or something, because it would, but it's not perfect for game art until we get it in this specific way. So there are a lot of things that we have to do to try to keep everyone talking to each other. Well, the main thing is keep everyone talking to each other, really. And it's hard and it's challenging, but the benefits outweigh the difficulties, I think, because we probably cost like 1/3 as much as we would if everyone lived in the same country and had an office and regular salaries and things. I think it would be a super different scenario. And certainly if everyone were in the Bay Area where I live, there's no way that I could make games for the money that we make them for. I think like the budget of our first game was $45,000, and that would pay for like a month of a few people in like if the size of the team is like 5 people, we're not gonna last long with that amount of money in the Bay Area. So yeah, even though it is extremely difficult, it's kind of worth it. Wow, I talked a long time about that.
Yeah, hi. I've got a question to you guys and generally to CEGC guys. Do you think what can we do as a community around here, or people that will be talking to each other through mails and switched business cards in the months to follow? What can we do, and will it be needed? Will it help if there would be more events like this all around the region? Let's say, in each of the big countries, because we have like 20 or so countries in this region, and there are 5 or 6 the big countries that could, I think, let's say in Poland, I think there is at least one big event like this, but for a Polish community, I think that there could be like 3 a year events like this. So it gives us a huge amount of events on a year scale in the region. And is it possible that this branch of events would develop, and what can we do as a community to help it out? Yeah, really. Thank you for the reply.
I think it would be really nice to build a much tighter and more focused community here in the region, because I feel such communities in states or in maybe even in England, for example, or United Kingdom, but here in this region, I think we should communicate more, and we should visit each other's festivals and conferences. Small advertising. I can invite everyone to GDS, which is Game Developers Conference in Prague in the autumn. All the presentations are in English or in Czech with simultaneous translation, so everybody can come. And
sorry to interrupt you. Please don't do next edition when it's PGA in Poland, because it's frustrating. Because all of the Polish developers go to Poznań to a trade show that's got 45,000 people, and you've got your conference I think 2 or 3 days after that, and sometimes it's just not possible because there is an indie show there, and at some point it's just interrupting the both shows each other. So
yeah,
that's
maybe I'm not the organizer. I think
I know
the organizers should communicate maybe more. That's the thing. That's what we are talking about, and because I think it's really helpful. But these are just game developers conferences. I think it would be nice to have some more festivals for real gamers, something like PAX in States. It's really good festival of games and gamers for gamers. It would be nice. Something which is not that commercial, but more about the culture, gaming culture. I don't see it here. That would be helpful, I guess.
I think that's true. In Vienna we have Game City, but that's usually a very kind of that's hosted essentially by the big publishers and a pure marketing event, I would say, or mostly a marketing event. It's probably unfair to say it's a pure marketing event, but that's definitely the main focus, and it's not so much a kind of celebration of the industry or the scene we're in, right? And I think this is what often drags people to an event that are not making their living out of games or trying to make their living out of games. But I think it would be very valuable to have. I noticed that by myself. I'm on the advisory board of this conference, but all of us are on the advisory board. Actually, right? And you hinted me. Thank you. And I just noticed that or I knew that before actually, that most of my contacts go into the German scene. I have a couple of contacts in the US and in the UK, and probably a handful from the Scandinavian regions. But really into the Eastern sphere, there is really very few contacts that I personally have, and I think that's why it's great to have a forum like that, and probably I'm a little bit ignorant of other shows or conferences or also more consumer-oriented events that go on in the eastern neighbor states, right? I think it, invite me, please.
Okay.
Just organizing those kind of events, this is great. This is a good example, and hopefully people will meet each other, and if they feel like coming back to you, that we are here in the middle of the world, they will come back to the city and hopefully understand that the local community is really, really, really important. So if you are only in Ireland and you are trying to reach like a big market or other developers or anybody in the US, and you said, oh, I'm on an island and I'm alone here, it's hard that somebody will notice and will come. But if you build like a bridge and they, oh, we are here, we are hundreds, come to us, then other will also follow. So I think that's important.
And so if anyone else has another question, raise your hand and pass the mic. But I'm gonna say one more thing about this, because from the U.S. perspective, I have noticed that a lot of people, including game developers, don't know anything about this region. And I've been to Poland a lot of times because one of my developers is there, and people are they're laughing and they're like, what are you doing in Poland? Why are you going there? They think that people eat roots and wear scarves on their heads and stuff. Like they
Yeah,
like,
no, we do.
yeah, well, roots are delicious. But then I'll list off all the companies there, and they'll have no idea. But if I list the games that are from there, they're like, oh, I had no idea those were Polish. And I think that just having more events here will raise the profile of everyone in general. Just having some kind of awareness that there's something that's events sometimes have a tendency to radiate outside of the region a bit more because international speakers come and they talk about it, or just things happen. So I think it could be useful just for helping like that buzz problem that we were talking about a little bit. So yeah, oh, there's a question right there.
Hi guys, drawing on this mentioning of game culture and game culture event, I would be interested. What are your favorite game culture events at the moment, and what would you think? What is the direction that these events should develop into the future?
Well, I have the mic, so I will start. I like Indiecade because it tends to be more about different things, not the same stuff. It's about what new and weird things are you creating and how and why. Like how are you integrating games into the body or into a physical space, or issues of diversity and inclusivity and these kinds of things. I like that because it talks about, while those talks almost always are very specific, you still get the feeling of expansion. Like the talks are kind of narrow, but the breadth of it makes you feel like games can go somewhere, and maybe they will, and maybe we should help them do it. And so it feels like a positive kind of place where, I don't know, this lady Daphne made a crazy exhibit all about like sex games, all having to do with like the body or penetration or something, and it was pretty uncomfortable but also really interesting. And then she just recruited a bunch of her friends to draw big pictures of penises and put it all over the place to just make everyone feel really strange. But it was a unique experience that I wasn't gonna get at any other conference, I don't think. So I want to have different new experiences, just not even as a developer, just as a human being. and so that's the kind of event that appeals to me.
Well, I think being from Vienna, my most important touch point when it comes to that is probably the Subotron shop, for obvious reasons. And I think what another thing that I just see a lot is just products of game jams. Partially also, for example, from people that work in my company, where people that make games for a living then spend their weekends making games, not for a living, but just for pure fun and inspiration and kind of recharging their batteries. And I think this is a really beautiful thing. I think it's amazing. In a way, I could probably take it as some kind of weird competition or anything like that. But I think for me, as my employer role, I think it's actually a compliment that people go out and still want to write code, in their spare time. I think that's a great thing. And yeah, probably those are the two major contact points for me that are most important for me.
My favorite event is probably Game City in the UK, Nottingham, which is great mix because it's great for game developers because they meet other game developers, local ones and international ones, mostly indie. It's great for gamers because it's a huge festival of games and they can talk to developers and play games and attend interesting talks. And it's also great for game journalists because they can observe it all and make interviews with developers and stuff. And also their after parties are quite legendary. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been to a lot of conferences, but I would say 2 years ago I went to Berlin and to Amaze, and that was really nice and funny. And I don't like big conferences. On one side, I didn't like Gamescom last year I was, but on the other side, GDC is big and I like being there. So yeah, there's also like not just small and big. It's how it's done. But Amaze in Berlin was like great. And on the other side, there is also like Quo-Vadis at the same time, so we can like hear stuff like how to monetize your game if you like that, or you can see people crying or dying games industry and learn why is it happening or something like that. And on the other side, you have that great alternative festival of funny, crazy, interesting games.
Okay, so we're out of time now. Thanks everyone, and thanks to all the panelists. And I guess we're gonna have Mary wrap up this conference. Thank you.